You're listening to Theater in College Hoops. I am Subi alongside me, Taylor Dammel. Very grateful to have Taylor here as he's powering through. What a warrior, a battler. You'll hear his voice here in a second. But we do have TD back with us. We're brought to you by Belly Up Media. Go download, subscribe, rate, and review us on whichever device it is that you use. Your college hooper of the day, Drew Gooden from Kansas. That's right. We're going Big 12 today, Taylor, and the theater goers. So I had to go with a player from the premier team of the Big 12, and that is Drew Gooden. Not necessarily a random hooper, a pretty solid basketball career, as it were. Certainly a really good college career. He was Big 12 Player of the Year. And then he had a nice career in the NBA as well. So Drew Gooden, he's your college hooper of the day. Check out the website at theaterincollegehoops.com and make sure to follow me at CVB Theater to find out where the theat is. You should also follow Taylor at Taylor Dammel. Let's open the curtains. All right, Taylor, welcome back. Welcome in. It's a miracle I have you here today for two reasons. One, we were talking about before the playoffs started that if the Diamondbacks were to force a game 4, you would be there. There is no game 4 because the Snakes absolutely swept the Dodgers. But in addition to that, you sound terrible, my friend.
I'm ill. I'm ill right now. But, Sub, the toughest teams survive. And that's what we know here in college basketball. So sometimes you just have to power through. You got to play hurt sometimes. So, yeah, I'm actually very happy that the D-backs won for a number of reasons. One is that I'm not sure I would have been able to go to the game today given my level of health right now. And so I apologize if I cough during this episode. I'll try my best not to. But I have a big complaint about
Oh,
baseball.
all right.
And so, well, first off, there's nothing better than as an Arizonan, a Phoenician, um, when a local team beats an LA team, especially in this manner, because there's just nothing better than their soft little fanhood that they all have over there on the West Coast, the actual West Coast. I think you would agree with me with that. Was that an accurate statement?
It's funny seeing the Dodgers go down. So I was having a conversation with my friends, and we were talking about the remaining teams left in the baseball postseason. And I was like, I'm pretty much good with the exception of the Dodgers, and this is when they were still alive. And someone was like, "Well, what's wrong with the Dodgers?" And I was like, "Oh, I just screw any LA team, really." So
Yeah,
that's so I'm kind of with you in that respect.
yeah. Cause I don't know. I'm not an LA fan in of the city of really anything about LA for a lot of different reasons. But um, isn't the narrative just kind of hilarious now that on from the baseball pundits of the world that the scheduling's not fair? Like I'm like get out of here. Yeah, it wasn't fair. Baseball, what's the number one thing everybody wants for baseball? If you're a franchise, you want rest for your big game pitchers. That's what everybody wants. Everybody wants. Oh, because all you hear for the playoffs, are we going to have to pitch this guy on short rest, short rest? Oh, are we going to have to, is our bullpen going to be ready to go? Are our arms fresh? All this type of stuff. And then now, so the Dodgers lose and the Braves are going to game 5, which starts here any minute. And now the rules are unfair and we need to change the scheduling. And it's like, okay, maybe don't lose to a team that won 84 games this year. Why all these teams with the highest payrolls in baseball are complaining about how somehow their talent is diminished because they had to take 3 whole goddamn days off. We're not talking about like weeks off here. Like I get that complaint in the NFL sometimes too, when it's like, okay, so the bye sometimes doesn't work out for a team that's rolling in the NFL, but in baseball, don't give me that. You took 3 or 4 days off, and now all of a sudden your 250, $350 million team just can't play baseball anymore because you had to take 3 days off from real games. And it's not just go play games in your own stadium then. Nobody's preventing you from pitching and hitting during that time. So I think this whole narrative that has been created now, where it's like, oh, all these good teams lost, it's only because we got 3 days off. That just seems really dumb to me. So, But I am excited about the series I just referenced, the Phillies and Braves series, like all the emotional stuff that's going on with that. Bryce Harper is like the coolest dude on the planet, just mashing home runs left and right, kind of like the D-backs did 2 nights ago. 4 home runs in an inning. I literally like looked down. We were at the Wandering Tortoise there in Central Phoenix. Sub has been there
Mhm.
before,
Great
and I
place.
re- and I read it, literally got up to get a beer, and I sat back down, and there were two guys watching the game in D-backs jerseys, and I looked at, and we are kind of just saying, "Oh yeah, cool, oh yeah, whatever." And I looked down and I looked up, and I was like, "What in the hell just happened?" Because I went to order a beer, and then I came back, and 3 home runs had been hit. So, um, so no, my major complaint is just about people in general and how they're treating this. But very excited for the D-backs, loving this Braves Phillies series. Um, and those are the two teams, as we talked about last week, that if I wanted to go to a playoff series for the NLCS here in Phoenix, those are the two teams I would have wanted to see. I mean, we talked about this 2 weeks ago before we even got through the wild card round, I should say. But seeing either of those two teams here locally will be a lot of fun. And I am certainly, well, I was excited to go until I was reminded that it's well, no, that the NLCS is 2-3-2, the cadence of the
Yeah, oh,
games,
that's right. Yeah.
and I will be in Sedona next weekend for my brother-in-law's wedding during the 3 games that would be played here in Phoenix. So it's World Series or bust for me as it relates to the D-backs.
Yeah. So it very well could happen. They've caught magic in a bottle, sweeping. They haven't lost yet, which is pretty insane. But yeah, Taylor, I absolutely hate the discourse surrounding playoff series. Everyone loves upsets. Everyone loves the underdog until it becomes a little bit too much. Until we start saying, "Well, wait a minute, the Orioles won 100 games. The Dodgers won 100 games. The Braves are down in their series. They won 100 games. The Rays nearly won 100 games. Why are they losing?" Enough of the rest nonsense. All right. Because if they were losing in similar fashion without having a week of rest or 5 days or whatever it is, you would be saying, well, it's not fair that they did all that work in the regular season and they don't have the rest. They should have like 5 days off to recuperate after a long season. It's all very silly. It's all very stupid. But yeah, that inning, 4 solo home runs, Lance Lynn, off of Lance Lynn. I saw a tweet and it was really funny. It was like, did we just see? I forget who of the four homered. I think it was the catcher, but it
Yeah,
went foul.
Gabby Moreno. Yeah.
So when he hit it foul, and then the very next pitch after a somewhat lengthy review, went yard to left center. It was clearly fair. I think someone tweeted like, "Did we just see a ball don't lie type of play in baseball?"
I mean, was that one of the coolest things you've ever seen in baseball? I know people
Oh,
don't
it
care
was
about the D-backs,
hilarious.
and I barely care about the D-backs. I'm not going to masquerade like I'm some kind of lifelong diehard D-backs fan or anything. But I mean, that was awesome to just be like, oh, okay, because I wasn't watching it. I had it on from afar, so I couldn't see exactly if the ball was fair or foul. But apparently, there was some actually legitimate debate of whether it was fair or foul. And yeah, to come back the next pitch. Uh, it was awesome. The only thing I think that's cooler that's happened in this playoffs is Bryce Harper just sunning Orlando
So
Arcia there. Just like, I mean,
so
I
I'm
I
again,
love
this
the
is
emotion of it. I
yeah.
mean, you got to love the emotion of it.
No, I do. I do. And here's the thing, like again, another perfect example of a scenario where you don't have to pick a side. It's okay to actually be on both sides of the fence here. So, first and foremost, it's the playoffs, it's Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper is kind of a hardo, but he backs it up. He's an amazing legendary player. He is worth the price of admission. But he is kind of a hardo. Let's all be serious here. He is that baseball player in your high school that wears a bunch of like fighting necklaces and he's got like he takes everything a little too seriously. It's like, all right, man, relax. It's just baseball. But on the other side, it is the postseason, and no matter what is said or happened, I don't care if the Braves are like that should have been kept in house. Bryce Harper's going to use that. Good athletes use any sort of like a shred of inspiration to then blast a bunch of home runs. Not that Bryce Harper needed it anyway, but you gave it to him. And so I also think like Orlando Arcia did really think like, hey, this is just going to be kept in house. I don't expect this to be broadcasted to Bryce Harper. I don't expect it to get to him. And they were having fun also after Bryce Harper made what some consider a base running error in a dramatic win for the Braves. So I'm totally fine with both sides, right? And I think the players are cool with it too. Like Orlando Arcia is saying to himself, I can't control what he does. It is what it is. Yeah, I did say it. Good for Arcia for saying, yes, I said it. I just didn't expect it to get to Bryce Harper. And on the flip side, Bryce Harper's like, he was asked by Tom Verducci, I think, or Matt Weiner. He was basically just saying, yeah, it's fun. Like this is what it is. This is baseball. So I don't think you necessarily, again, need to draw sand in the line and be like, Bryce Harper's being a jerk or Orlando Arcia. How could you have said this to get to him? It's like, just enjoy both, I suppose. That's, I don't know.
Well, and I would even support if people thought Bryce Harper was being a jerk. Like, I'd be cool with that. When you blast 2 home runs in the next game, like on the first 2 at bats, you're pretty much allowed to say and do pretty much whatever you want. I think at that point, you need those type of guys in the playoffs. Just as a sport, you need those type of guys. Like, don't get me wrong, you love guys like Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and those guys are better than Bryce Harper, but you're never going to get like that type of emotion and stuff out of them. And so you need some of these guys that or even like a Big Papi, someone that we have supported our entire baseball lives, right? Where it's like, sure, did Big Papi, most of those years he was batting like 270, 265, but his timely hitting and everything and the emotion he brought out was what made him so special. And it kind of same thing with Bryce Harper at this point. That is it just me? I said this a couple of weeks ago. Do home runs in Philadelphia just seem like a little cooler than everywhere else? Am I making that up?
Probably because of their fans. And I've said
that's what I'm saying. It just seems like the whole stadium just like lifts in the air, right?
Well, their fans are amazing. And I think any stadium for postseason baseball is amazing. And it's part of the reason why I love postseason baseball more so than anything else. We're recording this about 45 minutes, an hour prior to the pivotal game 4 of Braves Phillies. And I cannot believe there are some folks out there that are going to watch the Chiefs absolutely boat race the Broncos for the millionth time. Now, again, I'm recording before that game happened. So if the Broncos somehow pull off a miracle, then it is what it is. But there is no way in hell I'm going to be tuned into that game, especially when we're on Amazon Prime and we can't toggle between channels. No. I will be 100% on TBS. But as it relates to baseball atmospheres, right, the crack of the bat and the ensuing crowd pop, there's no sound better. There is no sound better. And so when Bryce Harper hits a towering shot to dead center or to break a deadlock to right like he did yesterday, it's just the enormity of it all is so cool.
Well, Sube, you're going to miss 100,000 Taylor Swift fans, though, if you don't watch the Chiefs game.
Good. I truly could not care.
The arc, it's so funny how far the arc has gone down the other side of from the peak on that already. But I can't wait. Maybe we'll see the refs throw another game for the Chiefs like they did last Monday or whenever that was, Sunday night, whenever the hell that was.
Get used to it, man. Get used to it. This is what it is. But you know what? It's funny. We're talking about Missouri, which is right next to. It's pretty much Big 12 country, although SEC. Missouri's now SEC country.
The border. Yeah,
we're basically there. All right. So we got the Big 12 to chat about today, Taylor. How great is that?
Good segue.
Thank you. I actually came up with that right here on the spot. Before we get into, though, Coach of the Year, Player of the Year, champs, all that stuff, some news out of the Big 12. Just first of all, actually, an insane amount of transfers that are going to be super impactful. We were talking about the SEC. Man, the Big 12, I was looking at it, Taylor. In my estimation, I think of the top 10 players in this conference, like 8 are transfers. I think only 2, again, in my humble opinion, the best players, I think only 2 have played with their team the previous season. But also, real quick, hey, Bill Self, the Teflon Don, baby. Nothing coming of the IARP. Taylor, I want you to take a moment and bask in this glory with me as we take our victory lap, considering we said this FBI probe back in 2017, which was supposed to raise hell and completely shatter everything, did not. It really didn't. Outside of, let's say, Sean Miller getting dismissed from Arizona, which you could argue was also a result of just poor play, which probably came as a result of not having scholarships, but they stunk by the end of Sean Miller's tenure. And then Oklahoma State no longer, or the postseason ban for Oklahoma State. And then Rick Pitino getting dismissed from Louisville. I mean, at the end of the day, Rick Pitino and Sean Miller are back in power conferences. And I guess, yeah, that's tough noogies for Oklahoma State, but nothing really happened out of this. And we told you that 6 years ago.
Well, my disappointment with it is still Arizona's outcome of it all. Bill Self, 100%. Let me make this very clear. Bill Self did 100% did way worse things than all of these other coaches, and essentially admitted to it, and has text messages and emails and stuff from his actual phone number and email addresses that said this is what happened, and just gets nothing out of it, which is just completely ridiculous that we essentially hamstrung another program with outright lies from reporters of things that didn't actually ever happen. And so this whole thing is just dumb. And the NCAA is stupid. The FBI's, why they even would have been involved in this in the first place is just dumb. Considering everything else we have going on in the world, let's make sure a college basketball coach didn't give $5,000 to a player because he wanted certain shoes. Yeah, I think we got other bigger problems going on in the world right now to figure out. So no, the whole thing is stupid. Bill Self, we always knew that this was, speaking of the Chiefs, we always knew that this was going to be spun in their favor, right? We knew that nothing was ever going to come out of it specifically for Kansas. We knew that. And so my disappointment with it is Kansas always backed Bill Self and said, ain't shit going to happen to him. Arizona didn't do that kind of the same. They didn't take that same hard line with Sean Miller. If they would have,
imposed, right?
Yeah. And I bet you that, well, they didn't even really need to dismiss him either. That was kind of to save face or whatever, whatever face was, where there wasn't even face to save at that point. So I wish that in hindsight, they would have just done that, because it caused a whole bunch of, rigmarole around the program that didn't even need to happen in the first place. So I think in hindsight, if you look at, your thoughts on Sean Miller aside, if your goal of your program should be to always support the head coach that's in place, and Arizona didn't exactly do that the same way that Kansas did, and so then look at the outcome for Kansas. Bill Self still there, won a national championship in that amount of time. He's still going to be there forever. So I guess it's a good lesson for other basketball programs that unless something is actually provable that's happened. Recruiting wise, not Rick Pitino had other stuff going on that was maybe a little questionable.
I still didn't even care about that, though.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. I know. I'm just saying that if you're a basketball program, the lesson is until your coach gets arrested, you back that guy pretty much until that happens, because there's going to be no reason to oust them at that point.
So I see what you're saying in a vacuum about backing your guy, but in hindsight, I would not have changed anything. And the only reason is because Tommy Lloyd's awesome. And because we
wouldn't have been able to predict that when this
but that's the whole purpose of hindsight. We have it now. If Tommy Lloyd was not good, and if Arizona had gotten a terrible coach and they didn't get a 1, what seed were they last year? A 2 seed, right? They've been a 1 and a 2 seed. And at the end of the day, we're still experiencing postseason failures. So it's pretty much the same. Not much has really changed. All right. We're not worse. So in hindsight, no, I would not have changed much. Unless, and also, and Taylor, again, I get what you're saying for sure, but it's easier to back a guy like Bill Self, who's a legendary Hall of Famer. And this is no disrespect to Sean Miller. He's not on Bill Self's level. So it's easier to back a guy like Bill Self. But as it pertains to backing your coach and not imposing self bans, yeah, that's probably, I'd rather that for a lot of programs as well. But I also think it's funny. So you're disappointed. You've mentioned some of the different emotions. I find laughter in this because I know so many people.
Oh, I agree with you on that though, as well.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, when you got guys like Pat Forty tweeting out that this was a nothing burger, you can't help but laugh because Pat Forty was one of the guys who seems like a hall monitor who's like, no, 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 you can't be doing this and you're ruining the sanctity of college basketball. And in the end, nothing happened again, like we all predicted. And so I think it's so funny when people are like, "Oh, these schools are going to get burned and they're going to get punished for what Bill Self and Kansas did, and they're doing it tongue in cheek." But I'm over here sitting down and being like, "Yeah, that's what happens, man. This is reality. This is life. The big guy, they get the protection. The little guy, the soldiers, you don't. I'm sorry. This is life. There are a handful of college basketball fan bases that can see their coach, can see their program, and they can say, I'm Teflon. The rest of us, you cannot. That is the reality of the situation. And so when you try and convince yourself that Bill Self and Roy Williams or whomever is going to get in trouble, you're running a fool's errand and you're silly and you're foolish. And I will make fun of you and laugh at you when you sit there and cry and say, why won't they bring down one of the biggest entities in the sport? It's not reality, man. I'm sorry, but you should have never set those expectations for yourself.
Well, and for those, the Jay Billises, Dick Vitales, all those guys, all the college basketball media, they were so quick to vilify and say everything was going to go wrong. Andy Katz has twice predicted that Arizona was going to have a 10-year long rebuilding span. And it took how many months combined? 4 months both times to rebuild the entire program and turn them back into NCAA powers again. It's just kind of funny that people, including media out there, think that like, I know that Kansas and Arizona are not on the same level. I understand that, but they're certainly Arizona's ahead of 360 other college schools or programs where it's like, oh, this is going to set their program back for decades. Decades? 3 months. Like you're trying to tell me that like, yeah, that all of a sudden like Chevy and Ford and all these teams are and all these brands are just going to fail overnight. No, that's not going to happen. Okay. And same thing here with this kind of similar situation. Even Louisville, they are going to be they're the worst team in college basketball last year. Do you want to bet that they're going to be pretty good in 2 years? I bet you they are. No matter who's there, what's going on. Some of these brands are just big enough. They're too big to fail, almost. Like, this isn't SMU in the 80s. Oh,
Right.
death penalty. Well, SMU had like 4,000 students at the time, right? Like there's some of these programs are just bigger than the entirety of college basketball. And you see that with conference realignment as well, with kind of a free agency of schools. And it's like, you had other conferences just pinpointing, okay, I want this school to come over. I want this school to come over. And those just happen to be in that circumstance, especially as it relates to the conference we're talking about now. They wanted the biggest, best basketball school they could find that was looking to move. And they got that. And so, yeah, I think it's laughable how all these pundits thought that this was going to end the college basketball world. And
Yeah.
life just moved on. It didn't even end. Yeah, like you said, all the coaches are just back at really good basketball schools anyway. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny to me. And yeah, of course you got the national media, the holier than thou folks, but then you also got the fan bases of small schools that are punching air. And I don't know, maybe it's because, like you said, Arizona's not on a Kansas, but we're certainly not on a mid-major level or a lot of relatively big schools in major conferences. I understand that we're closer to the big dogs than we are the little guys. And so maybe I'm a bootlicker. I don't care. I think it's funny when the little guy gets this riled up and this is the end result because it's all about proper expectation setting, Taylor. That's all I got to say.
Well, and I'll get off it on this. And I know that this isn't supposed to be why everybody chooses the schools and stuff that they go to. Almost no one was forced to go to a singular school. Everybody had, in some capacity, was able to pick what school that they went to. So I don't
won't go
hear,
that far. I won't go that far. There's a lot of circumstances in which why people go to the schools they go to.
Sure, but like going to like a Merrimack and then complaining that you didn't get like a big college basketball experience and like that you're not thought of as the same,
Well, yeah, that's ridiculous.
that's what I'm saying. It's like okay, you had the opportunity. I'm from North Pole, Alaska.
No,
okay, I could go and was able to find a school that I like.
No, but see, that's not fair. That's not fair. There might be people that don't have that opportunity. I'm just saying, if you didn't have the opportunity and you go to Merrimack,
hold on, let me walk you back. Let me walk. People who actively had the decision and chose to go,
yes.
So that's what I meant by saying that. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously there's scholarships, monetary, family issues, all that type of stuff, right? But people who actively chose to go to a place and then complain that they didn't get something out of that place, that's your fault. That's not
I
the
agree.
NCAA or Kansas's fault or whatever, So I just have a little bit of a a, a stick in my craw about those type of people, where it's like, okay, you chose to go to a school that had 3,000 people that was like a liberal arts school. I don't want to hear you complain that you don't get the same coverage that like a Kansas does. That's a choice you actively made. So why is that everybody else's fault?
It's not. It's not,
Right.
Taylor. Again, you know what? Kudos to Bill Self. Kudos to Kansas. I'm happy they're still standing. Let's move on now, though, to some of our predictions. TD, as always. Actually, before we get into the predictions, do you want to ask your questions?
Yes. And I mean, I think it's an obvious yes. Is there a Final Four team from this conference?
There is. So hang on. This is our fourth preview. I think I've said yes to every single conference. So does that mean I'm used up?
I think you said no. I thought you said. Did you say no? I thought you said no from the SEC. I said no from the SEC.
You said no from the SEC, but I said Tennessee can go to the final. Is it can go or will go?
No, will go. Will go. Is there a Final Four team from this conference?
All right, so I'm gonna. Uh, yeah, no. How about that?
Wow.
I mean, it's too unpredictable. I think Tennessee will go to the Final Four. I think Purdue will go to the Final Four.
I think this is the
ACT always has someone, so no.
I think just given the talent in this conference, arguably, it wasn't even arguably, it was far and away the best basketball conference in America last year.
Yeah, but
you don't even have to pick. I'm just saying you don't have to pick a single team even from this conference to say a yes. This would be, I think, the one you would say yes over any of the others, just because there's a lot of opportunity in this.
Yeah, conference. But see, we know that's not how the tournament works. There wasn't a Big 12.
I understand.
So yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, logic would dictate it, but it's the most illogical goddamn crapshoot of all time. Did we get a Big 12 team in the tournament in the Final Four last year? No.
Sure. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying we're taking the variable part of it out in this question of like, is there one of the four best teams in the country in this conference? Is really the question here.
Then yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. And Tennessee is not one of those. Is not one of the four best teams in the
really?
At this point.
Top seven. Top seven, top eight.
But it's not the final seven. So
that's true.
Continue on. Let's get into it.
It's up to you. Coach of the year. Who are you going with?
Well, we already talked about him, so let's just keep going. Bill Self. And the reason why this year is, I think it's going to be a little more narrative driven this year other than the fact that they're going to have a very good basketball team, one of the favorites to win the national championship as per usual. There's going to be a little bit of the discussion of, they had to kick a player off the team and they had to work Hunter Dickinson into the lineup. And I think there's just going to be a few narratives that the media is going to push in this scenario that is going to push Bill Self to what I believe is his record 7th. I think it's 7th. So here's what's interesting, right? Why is there not voter fatigue for Bill Self? But like there isn't other.
I like Bill Self, man. He's got the Southern Oklahoma drawl, maybe Midwestern Oklahoma drawl. He wins. I don't know. It's a good question.
But there's not. You would think in a conference that the only one team ever wins, there would be voter fatigue for the coach of that team.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. It's a very weird good question. I gave you a reason why there's not fatigue for Tom Izzo, even though like he hasn't won since 2012. I can't really pinpoint it on Bill Self. It is like,
weird. Why would Bill Self have 2 more conference coach of the year awards than like Coach K, who coached at Duke for 90 years?
I don't think people hate Kansas.
It's weird.
People hate Duke.
And
I don't hate Kansas.
People should hate Kansas like almost more because they dominate their conference. It's kind of like University of Wisconsin in a way where it's like if you go to KU, you're kind of considered to be like the better child of your family than like any of the other Midwesternish or Big 12 schools that are around there. Having cousins who are having one of each. One went to K-State, which I like more than KU. It's kind of like, oh yeah, he's going to KU. It's kind of interesting. It should be a such more hateable school. I'm sure Big 12 people hate Kansas. Like I understand that, but it is weird. It is weird that like there isn't this Kansas fatigue like there is in other conferences for their head guy. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll know more next year when we are members of a school that
Yeah.
will be in this conference. But I dislike Kansas for a number of reasons. And hopefully dislike them. We'll probably dislike them more starting next year. But I just kind of think that's interesting where it's like, yeah, this school just beats you up every single year, but they're like, oh yeah, you're still the best. Like, praise to you. I don't know. I don't get it. Maybe because I mean,
It's an
Houston's a,
insane level of consistency.
Houston's a newcomer ish to the conference. Baylor up until recently, not recently, but up until Scott Drew got there, like had players that murdered each other. So that wasn't like a school that you could root for in this conference. K-State's always been a good basketball school though.
Yeah.
Yeah, Iowa State is not exactly a brand. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like,
Iowa State's got a great fan base. I mean, so I see what you're
but it's not a
saying.
bigger brand than the other team in
No,
their,
that's true.
So I don't know. I just think that's a funny talking point. Whereas we've picked against other coaches just because of voter fatigue, but in this conference, it doesn't seem to exist.
Yeah. So I will say, and I think it's worth acknowledging when I mentioned like I'm happy for Bill Self in Kansas, that was strictly as it relates to the FBI probe. And now if I intertwine it with how folks view them, I don't think they've made many fans recently, not because of the FBI probe again, but because of the Arterio Morris situation. And that is seriously a terrible, terrible situation, what's happening. And I do think Bill Self deserves some criticism and questioning as to why Arterio Morris was brought to campus. So I don't know if necessarily Kansas is winning over many more fans, additional fans here this offseason. So, Bill Self, how he's viewed amongst folks might take a bit of a nosedive, but we'll see. I'm actually going to go with Grant McCasland here, Taylor. I am a huge Grant McCasland guy. Texas Tech is going to go back to the NCAA tournament as a low single digit seed, maybe a high double digit seed, that 9 to 11 range. All right. One of your favorite guys, one of your favorite names, Pop Isaacs. He's going to be the man. Need him to facilitate a little bit more, I think. But I love what Grant McCasland has as it relates to a roster here, especially for his first year. Joe Toussaint, he adds a veteran presence, leadership. He's been around the block. I think he's been at Iowa. He's been at West Virginia. And now he comes here to Lubbock. And then Devin Cambridge. We know Devin Cambridge very well. Former ASU man, also played at Auburn. He's a steady and consistent presence who can give you 10 and 6, and he's played at a high level. But let's go back to Grant McCasland here. He built UNT. I'm going to look at what he's done previously. He built the Mean Green. He's been to the tournament. He's beaten Purdue. And so I think you look at it from a big game perspective, he's got that under his belt. Additionally, Tylor Perry, who we're going to get to probably later in this episode, where did he come from? Everyone's talking about him at K-State. Developed under Grant McCasland at North Texas. Magnificent player. And I'm sure even Perry would credit McCasland in helping with his development. Let's continue to take a look at last year. McCasland in North Texas, they lose to FAU by a combined 8 points in 2 meetings. The man can coach his ass off. He won the NIT. Grant McCasland is an immediate impact guy. I look at him to have some sort of Jerome Tang type of first year, maybe not as good as Tang, where they win a ton of games and go deep in the tournament, but resurrecting that Texas Tech program after they were dormant for a year. Remember, they were only a couple of years removed from playing a very good Duke team to the wire. Paolo Banchero led Duke team to the wire. I think the places are there, or the pieces are set. It's not the same team that took that Duke team to the wire, but they got good pieces in Isaacs, in Joe Toussaint, in Devin Cambridge. I truly think Grant McCasland is one of the best coaches that some folks may not have heard about. He was one of the best mid-major coaches for sure. And I think a potential X factor that he's going to have to get the best out of is Kerwin Walton. That's a name some people may have forgotten. It's his second year in Lubbock. He was originally playing at UNC, but now he's at Texas Tech. I like the pieces that Grant McCasland has. I think he's a severely underrated coach. And if he brings Tech back to the NCAA tournament, he's going to win Coach of the Year. And I expect that to happen.
Well, and it's worthwhile pointing out that even if you finish 8th or ninth in this conference, that does potentially mean that you are a tournament team. How many tournament teams did this conference have last year? Was it 9, 10? I don't.
Something like that. Man, it
Yeah,
was an
right,
insane amount.
right. So that's an important, and a lot of people are picking Texas Tech like yourself to finish even in the top 5 in this conference. And so, you talk about North Texas a lot, Sue. We've had a lot. We had a good time in Denton, Texas, last time we were there.
Yes, we did.
I remember most of it, I would say. Shout out Denton Brewing as well. Good spot there. Actually, been to 2 high school graduations in North Texas basketball arena as well. That has nothing to do with the Big 12, but for some reason, we're just not going to talk about North Texas a lot on this program. So just needed to bring that up.
We're going to be talking about it even less with Grant gone.
Well, yeah, exactly. But no, I do like that pick because the national narrative is going to be like, oh my God, can you believe this guy rebuilt the Texas Tech program sans Chris Beard that was in the dumps? And it's a completely legitimate narrative. Chris Beard won the conference coach of the year, I think. God, I want to say he won it two or three times. 2 times. Yeah, he won it twice while he was there in back-to-back years. So to get a Texas Tech coach potentially 3 of 5 years, but not being the same Texas Tech coach is a pretty notable thing for the Texas Tech basketball program. But I'm supportive of that because they are some of the other new coaches we've talked about in other conferences just simply haven't had the firepower or the right situation to be good enough to be considered for conference coach of the year. Grant McCaslin's situation should really be able to get into that conference coach of the year discussion. Now, there's only one other new coach in this conference, and that's because we are lacking Huggy Bear at West Virginia. And boy, talking, they got some good transfers, but talk about a sticky situation for really lack of a better term at all there for Josh Eilert, essentially a West Virginia lifer.
I
Um,
like that.
yeah. Do you see any hope there for him? Not necessarily coach of the year, but just because he's the other new coach in the conference.
I think there's hope. I think the team's going to rally around him, and they're going to be maybe a nice story for about a month or so. But I am a little shocked at looking at all the research sites and the bracketologies and things of that nature, and folks are putting West Virginia as like a bubble team, maybe the first 4 in, and or last 4 in, excuse me. And I'm over here still steadfast in what I thought we had said the last couple months, which is I think West Virginia is going to be terrible. I think this is going to be a crash and burn situation. So I'm a little surprised with how many people have them as like a top seed in the NIT, barely missing out on the tournament.
I'll tell you
That's
exactly
just me.
why. I'll tell you exactly why. They
What,
got
Kirk
some notable.
Risa?
Yeah, they got some notable transfers. They did. Jesse Edwards, and then is Raekwon Battle? Did he get his waiver?
Raekwon Battles? I believe I'm not sure actually, but I
Right.
believe he should be playing.
But if you look at Kirk Risa, okay, you got a transfer starting point guard from a very high major school, a 1 and 2 seed the last 2 years when he was the starting point guard, right? On paper,
Oh,
it
you
looks
are
like
doing some gymnastics.
no. I'm saying that's why they're not going to be good because Kirk Risa is
Oh, I
their
see.
starting point guard. Yeah. I'm
My
saying
bad.
on paper from people from West Virginia and East Coast, people are going to be like, well, yeah, Kirk Risa, he started on 30-win basketball teams as their starting point guard. Like that's a pretty notable transfer. The people who watched and know Kirk Risa know that that's not where he's going to lead this team, in my opinion. So I actually I don't want to say feel bad because I feel like Huggy Bear was going to be a good coach for Kirk Risa. I think Sean Miller was a good coach for Kirk Risa. I don't think Tommy Lloyd was a good coach for Kirk Risa because Tommy Lloyd kind of lets his players do what they want to do a little more, and that's not a good thing when it relates to Kirk Risa. So I think his situation would have been much better if Huggy Bear was still there. Um, that's obviously a far gone conclusion at this point that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think that's why they're maybe getting a little more national plays because on paper it looks like they got some very good transfers. I'm not sure on the court they got as good transfers as it looks like.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll mesh well, but I'm rooting for Eilert. He's stepping into a really difficult situation. So we'll see how he does. So I'm going Grant McCaslin. You were going to go with old reliable there in Bill Self. Taylor, player of the year. Who's winning this out of the Big 12?
Well, I like what you said, and because I had the same thoughts about all the transfers in this conference. There weren't necessarily more transfers than any other conference, like we talked about with the SEC, but the ones that they did get are the absolute heavy hitters of the conference. You're talking about the top 5 transfers in this conference could be like first team All American type of players.
Yes.
Including like National Player of the Year, like Hunter Dickinson, who I think is going to win the Conference Player of the Year here. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Kansas's issues and people that might have to step up a little more with Arturo Morris not being there anymore. Maybe a shot or two more for Hunter Dickinson. I don't know, but at this point, when you got a guy that's as good as Hunter Dickinson is, as old and experienced as Hunter Dickinson is, and now playing for maybe the best team in the country, that's a recipe for your conference player of the year. So I hate to not be going out on a limb with either of these two picks, and won't be going out on a limb with my third pick for the conference champion either. It's just hard to bet against people who we've seen do it, and then you put a coach who's done it and a player who's done it together, and that's a perfect marriage in my estimation. So I'm going with Hunter Dickinson as the player of the year in the Big 12.
Can't argue with that. I think of these picks, Taylor, Coach of the Year, Player of the Year, Champ, I am most conservative when it comes to the champ. Somewhere in the middle when it comes to Player of the Year, and then Coach of the Year. I think I like to mix it up a little bit because we've looked at some of the previous winners, and you kind of scratch your head saying to yourself, "How does Coach K not have more? How does Tom Izzo's last Coach of the Year come back 11 years ago?" But for this year's Player of the Year out of the Big 12, yeah, it's a transfer. You could go with Hunter Dickinson. Some folks might go with Max Absmas. I'm going to go with Tylor Perry. Tylor Perry, baby. Kansas State. I'm expecting 19-5 out of him. 19-5-2, which is a stuffed stat line. He is taking over the Marquise Noel position for Jerome Tang. And Jerome Tang places a heavy emphasis on using his guards, especially like he did last season. And I'm excited to see what Tylor Perry can bring to the table because when Noel got the ball, when he played with Keontae Johnson, it was electricity on the court. Everyone remembers those tournament games in MSG, and it was the same thing that was happening all throughout the regular season. So I think Jerome Tang did a wonderful job of reloading, replenishing those two key figures in Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel, and he replaces them now with a Tylor Perry and an Arthur Kaluma. That's essentially what I'm expecting to happen. So don't adjust your TV sets. I think it's going to be a very similar style of play, just with two different folks. I expect Perry to play with a higher volume of possessions as well than he did last season. I was looking at some of the numbers. North Texas didn't have very many possessions, I don't think, compared to what we're going to see with Kansas State in the Big 12. So more volume of possessions means more shots for him, more attempts, and more opportunities to make a huge difference. So I'm very, very bullish on Tylor Perry. One thing that was a bit shocking, Taylor, I looked at, I think it was the coaches poll or preseason first team for the Big 12. Tylor Perry not on it whatsoever. And so maybe it didn't necessarily give me more reserve in this pick, but I'm wondering if people are somehow overlooking this because all I heard over the offseason was how great of a pickup it is. And it is a great pickup for Jerome Tang. But I'm looking at the first team All-Americans, or excuse me, not All-Americans, but the first team Big 12, and I don't see Tylor Perry's name. So I'm gonna skulking in the weeds here and saying Tylor Perry is going to win the Big 12 Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just what we talked about, though. Like some of the literally, there's like 5 players who are all Americans that are transfers. Like Max Absmas there from Texas, LJ Cryer, who is
RayJ Dennis.
another interconference transfer. I mean, LJ Cryer would probably be my second pick behind Hunter Dickinson. That's just me, but that's not again. It's hard to go out on a limb with anything in this conference because you just have so many good players. Jacoby Walter, excuse me, Jesse Edwards, even from West Virginia, just because he's a big name transfer and someone that a lot of the load is going to be on his shoulders. So yeah, there's just a lot of options to pick. So I don't think it's a slight towards him by any means. I think that there's just a lot of good options in this conference.
Yeah, tons of them. Are any of them going to contribute to a Big 12 champion? Who you got, Taylor?
I mean, Kansas. Again, here we are again. Yeah, beating this drum. Kansas has won, what is it, 30 of the
Billion
40 total. Yeah, like no other school has 3 conference titles since the Big 12 was formed. Like, come on.
That's so insane.
And only like 4 other schools have won it. So, obviously, this conference is awesome, though. So I'm not going to try and put down the fact that Houston is extremely good. Baylor is very good. Texas is very good. All a ton of talent on all these teams. Like I said, Jacoby Walters, the freshman of the year in this conference, potentially he's going to a Baylor school that, is just there every year at this point. But it's just hard to go against what we know. DeJuan Harris Jr., Nick, don't call me Justin Timberlake, KJ Adams, Kevin McCullough Jr., and of course Hunter Dickinson. That's the likely starting lineup there for Kansas, and just a bunch of dudes. Just a bunch of dogs there, as some people on social media would say. It's a cohesive unit, even with that's the thing. That's even goes to prove my point even more as to why Kansas is going to win this conference, right? Arterio Morris, a potential starter on this team, right? No longer with the program, and everyone's like, well, okay, well, still the unanimous pick to win the conference. So it goes to show you how deep they are. And like I said when we were talking about the Arterio Morris situation about a month ago,
yep,
it doesn't change my outlook for Kansas. And so I think Kansas is going to win this conference. It's going to be a 28-30 win team before we enter the tournament, just like they are every year. And Bill Self's just going to keep this train rolling. I'm not even sure. I mean, I'm not sure we're going to get to a point even this year where in some years it's like, oh, Kansas and Baylor and Houston are all tied for the conference title lead, and then those other schools just fall off the wagon at the end. I just kind of don't see Kansas having a slump. I'm not saying these other teams won't also go like 15 wins in conference, something like that. I just don't see them cresting over Kansas at this point.
So I had mentioned with the Arterio Morris thing, I think I had mentioned that this could potentially affect their seed, but like I could see Kansas winning the Big 12 regular season and then a Houston or even a Baylor or a Texas or, a lot of other schools. I could see them beating them in the Big 12 tournament and then getting a higher seed than Kansas. That's very plausible. But for the sake of the regular season, yes, Taylor, I'm going Kansas. There's a few variables when it comes to Kansas, okay, or contributing factors as to why I'm picking them. I've said, I think now for 10 years, I can't stand it when pundits and media members, when they're going through their predictions, they try and be zany. And there's more teams in the Big 12, so you're a little bit, you have a bit more cushion to pick some of the other teams to win this conference. But 5 years ago, there was no reason to ever pick against Kansas. And it's still kind of the same. Like, I'll hear you out if you want to pick Baylor. I'll hear you out if you want to pick Houston. I'll hear you out if you want to pick Texas. But I'm always going to go with Kansas pretty much year in and year out because they win the damn conference every single year. You talk about how good the Big 12 has been. Who won last year? It was Kansas. Who wins when the Big 12 stinks? It's Kansas. Who wins when the Big 12 is mediocre? It's Kansas. It's always Kansas. The answer is always freaking Kansas. And so I did the same thing that I did with Purdue, Taylor. And look, folks are saying it's 1 and 2. It's Kansas, Purdue, 1 or 2. You look at the roster that lost in the second round to Arkansas. They're all back, basically. Wando, who I love. Hunter Dickinson, obviously new. KJ Adams, McCullough, Timberlake. Don't sleep on Johnny Furphy. And then Parker Brown. They got Christian Brown's younger brother, and all the Browns do is win. So I wouldn't be surprised if Parker Brown now contributes to, or no, he's a senior. Yeah, I think he came over. I think he transferred, actually. So look, Kansas, I'm sure, will win a national title. The Nuggets will win another NBA title. The Browns will fill up their trophy case. But really, again, it's all about the Jayhawks when it comes down to the Big 12 title. There's no point in picking anyone else because Kansas is always going to prove you wrong. And if they don't, then it's better to be surprised than it is to have egg on your face and you're sitting here saying, you know what, I'm going to be quirky and take Texas Tech to win the Big 12. It's not going to happen. Put your money on Kansas. And by the way, this is a DeJuan Harris stan over here. All right. That's me. He is a foxhole guy. Last year, he was a foxhole guy with Marquise Noel and AJ Hogard. Hogard and Wando are still there. I got to fill in that third spot. But Taylor, it's Kansas, man.
So I used to be the guy that tried to do that. When we had a previous radio show that we've talked about before, that I was the fill-in host 60% of the time. We would do these college basketball predictions, and I would be like, "No, this is the year. This is the year," and it never was the year. So, I will step back and say that they did not win 2 in a row when Baylor won 2 in a row a couple of years ago, and then Texas Tech won it, but that was like 5 years ago. But that was it. That's all we've seen in the last 20-ish years. So
what did Kansas finish those years? Second?
Let me look. I have it pulled up right now. I think they finished second almost every time. Oh no, Iowa State won it 1 year, or was it second place 1 year. So
okay.
It's probably a year Kansas won the national championship or anything anyway. Or went to the Final Four anyway. So yeah, they don't get it one way, they'll get it another. So not that we talk about conference tournaments very much on this program, but they obviously also have the most conference tournament titles. Although their dominance in that event is, I guess you would say not quite as much, because like Iowa State has actually won 5 tournament titles, funny enough, and that's who's in second place, which you wouldn't predict them as being the team out of all this to have won the second most conference tournament titles. But yeah, I think that this is, they're arguably the best team in the country, so you can't really pick against them to win their own conference, in my estimation.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Taylor, let's move on to the impactful transfers. Let's see. I'm sure we'll have some overlap, but I'm curious to know the differences here. And I'm sure like Hunter Dickinson is on that. So honestly, you can skip talking about Hunter Dickinson if you want to, but who's on your all transfer team?
I mean, it's hard. We've already talked about most of these guys. So Hunter Dickinson is for sure one of the guys. LJ Cryer, again, as we've discussed, for sure one of the guys. And there's really not much to talk about with him because we've seen him perform at a very high level over and over again. Jesse Edwards, who transferred from Syracuse to West Virginia, as I mentioned before, he's going to have a big man in the middle. He's going to have a lot of rebounds to get from Kerr Kriisa missed 3-pointers. So he's going to that'll be a pretty big impact for him there in West Virginia.
Oh, goodness.
Max Abmas there from Oral Roberts to Texas. Texas is going to be very good again this year. And Texas is, think about this again. We've made Chris Beard references on this program, but it's very impressive that Texas is as stable as they are, just given what happened to them last year. It's quite the rearview mirror moment, and that wasn't even a year ago now that happened. So shout out to Texas for that, because they're going to be very good.
Shout out Rod Terry.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm excited to see maybe just because in the all name teams some Jameer Nelson Jr. At TCU. That'll be a good one. So that's who I'm going to go with. I'll go with Cryer, Dickinson, Edwards, and Jameer Nelson Jr. along with Max Abmas. Now, of course, you got Arthur Kaluma too. I feel like you're an Arthur Kaluma guy, and I left him off because I thought maybe you were going to go in a little different direction than I did, but that's who I'm rolling with here.
No, I like that list. And Kaluma didn't make mine either. Maybe we're disrespecting Mr. Kaluma here because he was tremendous at Creighton. Awesome, awesome career. And he's going to contribute, like I had mentioned, alongside Tylor Perry. So my transfer team, Hunter Dickinson, we've talked about him ad nauseum, not only on this episode, but like the last 2 years. It seems like you guys know about Hunter Dickinson. I talked about Tylor Perry. Tylor Perry's also on this team. How can he not be if I have him winning Big 12 Player of the Year? Then I go to LJ Cryer. So there's some overlap. Again, I'm going to dive in a little bit to Cryer, though. He is a veteran who can score the ball, and it's an insanely tough backcourt between him and Jamal, don't take him to the wood, Shed. It kind of reminds me, actually, of the backcourt we talked about last episode, Tyson Walker and AJ Hogard. So I love the combination of Shed and LJ Cryer. I don't think LJ Cryer has ever truly been the man. And I don't know if he will be at Houston this upcoming season, but he is very comfortable in that Robin role. He's had to play alongside Keontae George last year. He had to play alongside Maceo Teague, Jared Butler, and Davion Mitchell en route to a national title. So I think he's going to be a wonderful complement to Shed. And he gets to play for Kelvin Sampson, who has been able to say that they've gotten to play for Kelvin Sampson and Scott Drew, two of maybe the top 3, top 5 coaches in the entire country. He's going to be great, and he's going to have an awesome college career when he looks back on it. Max Absmas, yes, pure bucket. Him and Tyrese Hunter could be the most exciting backcourt in America because they are going to put up shots. People forget Texas probably should have gone to the Final Four. They just got cold. I don't expect that to happen. Maybe it'll happen again, unfortunately, in the NCAA tournament because who knows what the hell happens. But having Max Absmas is having a pure scorer that can go get you a bucket. And I'm happy for Absmas because he's like Bigfoot almost. People have heard these fairy tales. And even though they saw it against Ohio State a couple years ago, people don't understand the scoring prowess this young man has because he was buried in Tulsa, Oklahoma, playing for Oral Roberts. Having that scoring option is going to be fun. He has the tournament experience. And like I said, Texas, he probably should have gone to the Final Four last year. They're very close. And here's a name, Taylor, to round it out that we have not mentioned quite often at all. RayJ Dennis. RayJ Dennis is going to be Baylor's best player in my eyes, either him or Jalen Bridges. He's insanely efficient and wildly productive, 24-6 in the MAC for Toledo. So I expect that to decline just a little bit, but he's a grown man now. He started college in 2019, pre-pandemic. He's going to be able to get around some of these younger guys. I love RayJ Dennis and the pickup there for Scott Drew. The question is, what can he give to the Bears on the defensive end? Because Baylor was appallingly bad on defense last year. It was their downfall, really. So I love RayJ Dennis, but that's going to round out my transfer team. I'm going to go Hunter Dickinson, Tylor Perry, LJ Cryer, Max Absmas, and RayJ Dennis there.
Boy, you can tell where my head's at right now with my name pronunciations throughout this episode today.
Still preseason.
I know I'm still trying to round into form myself. So I appreciate your corrections there.
Hey, let's keep you sharp here. I know you're sick. I want to get you out of here, get you some soup, and also we got to watch Braves Phils. So can we kill it out on some Big 12 trivia, my friend?
Yes. Are you giving it to me or am I giving it to you here?
I was prepared to give it to you, but
okay,
if you have some...
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm ready.
All right. Because again, I don't want to put too much on your plate here. Not that you aren't willing to take it.
I'm happy with it.
Which 4 freshmen have won Big 12 Player of the Year?
4. Wow. Cade Cunningham.
That's correct.
I
think you got the most. Oh no, you didn't get the most difficult one. The third most difficult one.
Kevin Durant.
That's 2.
The other 2 are easier than that.
One is easier. The remaining one, I misspoke. Cade was probably the second toughest one. Okay. You got the easiest, which KD. I think there's another pretty easy one. But I'm also looking at the answer. So
he's probably not a Kansas guy because they just don't seem to be the yeah.
If you said he was a Kansas guy to his face, he'd be very
upset. Be easy. Yeah. He led this nation in scoring that year, I believe, 28-something points a game, I think. And then
now this one's tough.
So I know that Oklahoma State has the second most Conference Player of the Year award winners.
Wow.
Because I was looking up, that was going to be my question to you, was which school has the second most. And so let's go with a guy who got in a very controversial fight with a guy on the front row, and that's your former boy.
Still my boy.
Still your boy, Marcus Smart.
Maybe he is my former boy, because after watching Porzingis these couple preseason games, oh boy. But man, Taylor, well done. Knocked it out of the park. KD, Michael Beasley, Marcus Smart, and Cade Cunningham. Very well done, my friend.
I mean, pretty good NBA players, all things considered, really. I mean, Be
Got an
easy, bounce
MVP,
around.
Depoy, Cade's
Yeah.
coming.
I mean, I mean, he's gonna be an NBA lifer. You know, he's not a bust. He's not gonna be a bust in my
No,
estimation. So yeah,
got to
I'd
be
say
healthy.
yeah. Be easy. Probably
He
should have
wasn't
been
bad.
better at. He
Yeah.
probably should have been a little better than, especially because he was one of my guys there in Miami there.
Miami.
So guy doesn't love defense or sobriety. Let's put it that way.
Hey
So.
man, Michael Beasley was
And
bad with some
I'm
stuff.
not talking about liquids. I'm not talking about
Oh
liquids.
yeah,
I'm talking about some plants you light on fire. Is what I mean
yeah.
by that. So
I ain't gonna fight him for that. He had
yeah,
a nice career, but yeah, that's a wrecking crew right there. Those
yeah.
four.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
All right,
let's move on
number
to this
two.
next one. What original member of the Big 12 has yet to produce a Big 12 Player of the Year? Original member.
What original member is yet to produce a Big 12 Player of the Year? Well, it's obviously not Oklahoma State, Texas. It's
There you
of
go.
course not. Yeah, it's. Um, I don't think it's Iowa State because I think like Melvin Ejim won it. I think back in the day. I
Also,
think.
I don't even know if they're an original member, but
Uh,
I'm not sure. Like
I
they
would
could be,
think,
but it's not
yeah.
Iowa State. Correct.
TCU is not an original member, or I would, so um, what school, what would be left at this point?
This was kind of shocking to me.
Process of elimination, and I haven't even kept track of who I've eliminated. What West Virginia, maybe?
No, remember West Virginia was in the Big East.
Oh yeah. True. Shit. Hmm. I'm not sure on this one. This is a little surprising to me.
It's the Baylor Bears.
Oh yeah, geez, yeah, completely whiffed on remembering them.
But that's okay because despite all of the struggles that Scott Drew and Baylor has had in the tournament, obviously prior to the national title team, he's had some really good players. Torian Prince, you think of Davion Mitchell, like Quincy Acey, man, like he's had some really good players. Who's the small point guard? Pierre. Oh my God, this is gonna kill me.
Uh,
Oh my God, this is gonna kill me. I got
did
go
they
ahead. You have a thought. I gotta look it up.
didn't they have a Tweety
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 Carter.
Carter? Yeah, also a small guard.
Maybe that's
Yeah,
what I was thinking
no,
of. Pierre Jackson. I was thinking of
yeah.
Pierre Jackson.
I mean, it actually kind of doesn't surprise me because if you list all of those guys that we just listed, they're kind of all, well, maybe Davion Mitchell higher ceiling than those guys, but they're all. Baylor's strength has always been that they have a lot of the same guys on the team, right? They've got a lot of like NFL players. You could pretty much make an NFL roster out of like
I
Baylor's
mean,
usual roster.
Rico Gathers literally was in the NFL.
And even Fendi Onabun transferred to Baylor, and
Good call.
before he became a tight end. So did you know that Antonio Gates played played basketball before he
Wow.
played football? Yeah,
Imagine
Tony
if
Tony
yeah,
Gonzalez
imagine if
too.
he did. Yeah.
Yeah, you know that Desmond Ritter has never lost a home game. Okay, anyway, so
What?
I guess it. Yeah, he's
Wait,
never.
hang on. Desmond Ritter?
Yeah, that was the narrative. Yeah, you haven't heard that 1,000 times this year in
Oh,
the
it's
NFL.
Cincinnati? He's not
And
worth my time.
even in high school, I guess he's never lost a home
Uh,
game or something like that. So anyway,
yeah.
it actually doesn't surprise me because all those guys, they've had a lot of guys who are always like the third or fourth best player in the conference, but then they've got like five of those guys all at the same time. So up
Isaiah
until
Austin? Damn.
yeah,
I mean, he was nasty in college, and like I
he
don't
was
think he had.
awesome.
What was it, Marfan syndrome?
Yeah,
Like I don't think he had that, or maybe he had to.
I
Maybe he
think he
had
did
that
have it in.
at
I
the
think he did
end.
have it in
Yeah.
college. Yeah,
Uh,
but they've
uh,
never had the peak guy, the Kevin Durant, the Michael Beasley, uh, and some of those teams. I mean, they've usually been pretty good, but then some of the times that they've had those good guys, they weren't quite as maybe as good as they should have been.
who?
And then previous to Scott Drew, obviously you would have had nobody that
Yeah.
would have been an option. So it
Yo,
doesn't surprise me that much.
Taylor, who was the freak athlete that they had? Uh, in like the 2010s, maybe when we were in college.
The 7'1"
Oh,
guy, the
no,
big
no,
guy.
no, no. He was like a small forward. I wanted the Celtics to draft him so bad. And I think they ended up drafting Marshawn Brooks. Who was this?
Um,
I think he ended up going second round. He was just an awesome athlete.
let's
Oh my
think
gosh,
about
this is
it.
going to kill me. No. This is going to kill. It's something Perry.
Yeah, that's exactly who I'm thinking of too.
It
It's
is Perry Jones.
yeah, wasn't
Perry
he what?
Jones.
No, I think he was huge. Was he not? Yeah, he was 7 feet tall.
Perry Jones was 7 feet tall.
6'11". Yeah.
Why did I think of him as like a small
No,
forward?
he was nasty. I wanted him because he was an extremely high recruit. He's like the seventh
Yes.
highest ranked recruit in the country, and I wanted him. I was way more into recruiting when we were in
He was
college than I
6'11".
am
Dang.
now, and that was a guy I really wanted Arizona to get. It was him because he was just like a Madden creative player, just from his
Yeah.
size and athletic prowess. So yeah, that is the guy who I was thinking of. I thought he was
Okay.
maybe a
That's
little
on
taller than
me.
that, but
That's on me. That's on me.
no, but he wasn't a
When you're
center
thinking
though.
like,
He
yeah,
wasn't a
okay,
center
so he
though.
wasn't a center. Like when you said like 7 foot
Well, I guess maybe
Baylor, I'm
yeah.
like,
We're
no,
kind of
that's
talking around the
Isaiah
same.
Austin.
We're talking
Yeah,
around the same circle. Like he was a freak because he was so big, and yeah, right. So
it's weird. That's going down Baylor's memory lane. And then here's my last one. I don't necessarily
that
expect you
is
to get this.
that is a lot of good players though for no players
That's
of
what
the
I'm
year. Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying, man. For a charter member team, right?
yeah. Mm.
Here's my last one, Taylor. I don't necessarily expect you to get it. It's almost like a free form essay. So I'll like based on your response, I'll see if you got the right parts in. But why did Fred Hoiberg receive the nickname the Mayor as an Iowa State player?
I feel like I know this story. This is like a Chat GPT, like uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Prompt. Excuse me.
Prompt, yes.
Um, I don't even remember.
So let me know if you
Uh,
want me to when you want me to
yeah, go
explain.
ahead. Go ahead. I might be too Dayquilled out here today to remember the full autobiography of Fred Hoiberg here. So
That's right. That's right. I feel bad for you, man. You're powering through. But Hoiberg was so popular during his stint with the Cyclones that he received a good number of write-in votes in the mayoral
uh,
election for Ames in '93. The former Iowa Mr. Basketball in high school and 10-year NBA vet is, or he was, the Cyclones head coach, also head coach of the Bulls. But it's not so much that he was just popular and make my own rules, bitch, call me the mayor. No, it was he legitimately got write-in votes for mayor. So Fred Hoiberg, another little nugget, he signed the back of my 8th grade class schedule when I went to see the Celtics versus the Timberwolves. That's a true story.
I think I knew that. Now, Fred Hoiberg is one of those guys that sneaky awesome basketball career that like a lot of people won't talk about in 20 years. I mean,
Yeah,
multiple time NBA coach,
yeah.
for not that he had like
Wait, where else
like
was he an NBA coach?
the Timberwolves
Oh,
and
that's
the
right.
Bulls, the Pacers, the
I know the
Bulls,
Bull.
and the
He
Timberwolves.
was on
Or
the
no, excuse me, that
Pacers
was a
too.
player. That was a player. That was a player.
Okay,
My bad. My bad. My bad. It was only the Bulls. It was only the Bulls.
okay.
But
That's
yeah,
what I thought.
but point being the fact that he played for 3 different NBA teams
Yes.
for 10 years, like coached you know, his alma mater, has coached at 2 decently large basketball programs or schools in Iowa State in Nebraska. Not that anyone's going to write home about uh, Nebraska basketball, but kind of like a sneaky, awesome basketball career where
Oh yeah.
he has seen the sport from every level. But no one in 20 years, nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, Fred Hoiberg, like legend, But for like I don't want to call him a regular dude because he was an NBA player, but for a dude from Iowa, like a pretty awesome basketball career at every level of the game.
Definitely. Look, I got a special place in my heart for Fred Hoiberg. He signed young Supermanian's, like I said, 8th grade schedule, and he's going to be a great player to use an immaculate grid and any crossover grid that we do for basketball. Him and like Tom Gugliotta. I loved those Timberwolves teams. I really did. Taylor, did you have any questions for me, or should we get on out of here?
No, let's just roll, man. I think we've done enough trivia for this one.
That was the Big 12. We are going to continue the previews. Pick it up next week. TD, I really do appreciate you gutting this out with me. Let's go watch some baseball. All right.
There you go. Sounds good, my friend.
We'll catch you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.